Hey, welcome back to the channel. We have something kind of fun and probably super random that's about to happen. I got a pretty good feeling about the craziness factor of this particular stream. I'm going to bring in David because this is actually mostly his master plan. So if it all goes terribly, we can blame him. So let's bring him in. Hello, David.
Awesome. I will take all the credit and
Yes.
the blame for whatever happens this evening.
I like it.
So let's.
Got the grin on your face. You're going to take some pleasure in this too, it seems. That's good.
We're at this stage that we're just throwing pasta on the wall and we
Pretty
see
much.
what sticks. But
Yeah.
I have a pretty good feeling that this evening pasta are going to stick on the wall, and that's something that we might repeat again. But
Something's going to stick on the wall. That's for sure. I can just about guarantee you.
Yeah.
What exactly? We just don't know yet.
And as we often said, it's super selfish. We just create this just to hang out with cool people and just
Yeah.
force them to accept our invitation.
Yeah.
So the more the merrier.
Exactly. So should we bring in our esteemed colleagues?
Do it.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it.
So we have Lana Bachynski. Hello, Lana. Welcome back.
Hello, thank you.
And we have
I'm happy to be here.
you've turned into a robot since we last saw you. That's very interesting. A yellow shirted robot.
I'm here for the exciting evening we're about to have.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's going to be one of those nights, folks. Buckle up. Okay, we got Mr. Michael Jungbluth also on the channel. Hello. Hello, sir. How are you? He's trying.
Less than 5 seconds.
I'm okay. How are you?
Yeah, Lana is way better than you are at this game.
She is. I've got a terrible poker face.
So it begins. Well, you have an hour to catch up and sort of, redeem yourself, Michael.
No,
So
it's like, don't even, like, why waste my time?
All right. So what we chose to do this evening is, Brett and I, a couple of weeks ago, were doing those Q&A sessions, and at some point, like, you know what, let's bring more people, and not necessarily answer some question, but let's have some interesting topics and discuss them and see where it lead. It can go in a very serious direction for a few minutes, then become totally absurd. Let's see how it goes. So, by the way, there's no one of those fine guests and Brent have any idea of what we're going to discuss. So that's going to be all new for you.
This guy's master plan right down here. Can't even get my finger in the right freaking spot. There we go, right here.
Exactly. All right, so Brent, it's been almost a year that we started to this little crazy experiment with streaming every week, actually twice a week.
Yep.
And I thought, we're towards the end of the year. It's been another pretty crazy year, and there's definitely some topics that came back often this year. So I was like, you know what, we're getting closer. It's almost close to the end of the year recap.
That's what you're
what
doing. I see where you're going.
Yeah, what are some of the trending topics that we have discussed this year to maybe try to wrap a little bit this year? So the first one, and Brent, you're going to laugh at this one because that's something we literally talked about
Oh boy.
4 hours ago in a completely different context. So the first topic I'd like to discuss with you guys is what we're all now referring, a term that we didn't knew existed 2 years ago, but let's call it the new normal of whatever is going to happen after this crazy social experiment of all being isolated for a period of time. We start to have an idea of how things are going to land, and in my own observation, I mean, usually whether it's in personality or it can be politics or whatever, we often separate those that are progressive and conservative. And no bias here, but progressive, those that aspire to a better future, and conservative, those that wants to hold to what is already working and what they have. And I've been observing with Agora, we're in contact with a lot of studios. There are some of them that are very progressive. Here in Montreal, some studios that are already, you're paid 4 days a week, but you actually just have to work 4 days a week. Remote, on-site, hybrid model. Some studios you don't even have a dedicated desk anymore. You literally will have to reserve your desk ahead of time. And on the other side of the spectrum, there's those that are right now only limited by what the government will allow them to, how many people they can fill back in the building, and they're just waiting for this to be over to impose everyone coming back. So my question, or let's start the discussion. How do you think this is going to play out? What will most studio be doing? Maybe what will happen with the studio that go completely remote? What will happen with the studio that are forcing everyone to come back? Where do you see this play out? Not only the next few weeks, next few months, but next few years in general. So whoever wants to tackle this one, I would say, Lana, we'll start with you.
I definitely think that's a really interesting topic, and I think it's something that is at the forefront of many people's minds all the time. I feel like in the pandemic, because of the way that it was sort of discussed at the beginning, it's like, okay, work from home. We'll all be at home for like 2 weeks or something, or we'll come right back to the office. And no matter how many times it's been extended out, coming up on 2 years, there's always this idea that it's been temporary. So I do feel like a lot of the conversations about the pros of working from home, working remotely versus the cons and the way to like lean into that, all the conversations about building infrastructure that would make companies notably successful in that way, I feel like it's just a consistently postponed conversation because of the belief everybody's going to come back. So for me, I think that no matter how you feel about working from home, pros, cons, whatever, that is, as you said, the new normal. The reality is during the pandemic, a lot of people's priorities changed. One of them, probably not living in expensive cities, is a good thing to not want in the future. And there are companies who are going to make the choice to go fully remote and support people in those decisions. And they will get people, they will have an easier time recruiting. Mm-hmm. They will have a difficult time with many other things. They will be at the forefront of figuring out some stuff that's probably going to be really uncomfortable for a while. But even if you have one person who you don't want to lose at your company, who you let go remote, you're a fully remote team because you have to help that person to not feel like they are other. They're this other, like less because they're not there on campus with everybody else. So I feel like if you are a studio right now and you are not looking at the past couple of years and looking toward the future and being prepared to lean in and help build the infrastructure to make the world more globally connected from places outside of large city hubs, a couple of years down the line, I bet you see it fall back a little in people's mental priority.
Yeah, that's the kind of conditions that you cannot just provide to, let's say, just the supervisors or just if you allow some people to work from home, it needs to be a policy, a studio-wide policy that will be applied to all. So it's almost it's binary. Either you embrace it or you don't.
It's all or nothing.
But even when it comes to conversations about levels, Mike, I don't know if you've had this where I've seen people say, we would let people who are senior enough work from home because, they've built the trust. But it's also like, but aren't those the people you most likely want closer together because they need to talk and make more decisions?
True story.
And if you have all of your the lower level associate, mid-level people working remotely, they're the people who would most benefit usually from that kind of in-person collaboration by way of their own personal growth and learning. So who do you prioritize in this way? Do you make sure that you have this solid core foundation and a bunch of people scattered, or you start building up the future and making sure that the people who are doing a lot of the bulk of the physical work that needs to be done are getting what they need? I don't know. It's like sorry, Mike, I don't know what you've seen by way of these conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in. So we did the Annam State survey almost a year ago now. So we'll be running that again soon. And we asked people, hey, if you're not offered the work from home or remote options that you're wanting at your studio, would that be enough to make you leave and look for new work? And almost 50% of people said yes. And that was a year ago. And I think we've only sort of gotten better at the work from home thing. And now also you do have some places where people are going back to the office because there are some people that are like, I want to get back to the office. I like having that separation. I like having a place where even if I don't see anybody else all day, it's a dedicated spot where like distraction free. And so, I'm interested in seeing where people's thoughts are at and if that number changes. But I do think it definitely comes down to, like there are teams that have embraced it and gotten better at it, and studios that have embraced it. There are studios that have started up entirely in this environment and are saying, hey, we're just going to build from the beginning and let it happen. And then I think you also have some places that are sort of, you realize where there were flaws in your communications system and approach, that being together sort of wallpapered over those flaws.
Oh man, I totally agree with what you just said.
The wallpaper's down now, and it has been for 2 years, and there's still people like, well, once we get back to the office, I just want to put the wallpaper back up. And it's like, no, that's not like, we got to fix this shit behind the wall and patch up the hole and make this real thing. So I think you're running into all of these sort of different things on top of the fact that depending where you're at on the project also really matters. The creative collaborative stuff of a pre-production cycle is so much easier when you're in person because you can riff and you're building those relationships and trust and all of that stuff. Once you get into production or post-production, it's triaging bugs, heads down, let's focus on stuff. That cycle, that actually works pretty well from work from home, and remote, right? So there's a lot of variables there that I don't know. People have either embraced them or they've said hand waved them, and the hand waves are gonna catch you in the ass.
See, for me, those parts that the early parts, the pre-production, the prototype phase, are those only easier in person because the tools and the strategies are thus far largely untested in an online space, because there are studios who have been remote forever and have released successful games. How chaotic it is behind the scenes, I don't know. Or is it a pretty sick game though?
That's a tricky one. It's hard to measure these things. I mean, that resonates with me personally, but maybe it's completely different for other people. But I know that I really, really like the idea of the brainstorming, the energy of being in the room together. But not everyone's like that, you know. So like, I think it might be some people might have a completely different version of that story. It'd be interesting. I too would be very interested to hear what that what comes back from another poll. I think that would be a very interesting exercise for you guys to do, because I would really, and I don't know, like, I assume it was all anonymous. Or did you track emails? Okay.
Yeah, it's all anonymous. And then we also, one of the follow-up questions we have is, did you leave your job this year and why? So that what we'll be able to start tracking with this next one is who left because their work from home and remote wasn't an option to them.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's really interesting. Like the biggest one that I've found that you really have to fight to overcome in work from home and remote stuff is that it's easy to fall into a situation where all of your communications with team members becomes transactional. And it's all around, here's a challenge we have to solve. Here's an obstacle. Hey, why am I not able to get this thing? Hey, here's a bug. Hey, I need you to do this for me. And you have to find ways of working around that. And that naturally come from when you're in the office, because you can be like, hey, what do you want to grab for lunch? Oh, why does that look wrong? Right? What happened there? And the what are you doing for lunch, or hey, let's go talk about it while we get a coffee, were the ways to keep that from being purely transactional. And that's harder to totally replicate unless you're consciously trying to do it in the online space.
Well, that's the toughest part. I mean, we've done something with, Agora have always been in remote, and that's something we were struggling, way before the pandemic. How do we create those little unorganized, discussion, which is where at least 50% of, creativity and the work gets done. And even today, just open a room. Hey, whoever wants to show up, just randomly, the 5 of us. And we had a super constructive discussion about something we had no idea we would be discussing. So it can be done in remote, but as people are not around, it's much more difficult. You have to consciously create
it doesn't happen organically.
Those moments, those open room that there's not a meeting, there's nothing scheduled. It's almost like you create the setting and you hope that people will show, and then you'll have something to but another thing that's going to be a big challenge for is that, okay, let's say we go with an hybrid approach, some home on site. Okay, let's agree that a good creative brainstorm is better in person. Okay, but what if you have a team of 8 creators and 3 are from home and 5 are on site? Where is the energy going to be? For sure, it's going to be the 5 that are on site, and probably the other 3 will be in a Zoom room and will have a hard time just even to put a word. So does it mean that it needs, okay, it's hybrid, but everyone at the studio Tuesday and Friday, and everyone from home? That's another part that's going to be very challenging, because part home and part in remote will be difficult to get the best out of it.
That's
I totally agree.
One of the things that I say, like, if you have one person remote, you're all remote. Because if I'm doing a big brainstorming session and there's 1 or 2 people who are not there, I would encourage everybody to be calling from their individual machines rather than loose meeting room microphones where they're getting 20% of it. And if there is a need to get brainstorming everybody here, then I feel
you schedule for it
and you fly the people in if you got to fly them in.
Exactly. This guy, just to reconnect to something that Mike said that really it's crazy, because I feel like he was reading my mind, because I've had exactly this argument. I've said quite literally, and this is funny because this was before the pandemic rolled around. I was trying to make a case for companies trying to embrace the idea of remote working. And the reason is because I just felt like, yes, there are some pros and cons, but I think a lot of the pros that people think are the cons to remote work are actually kind of fictional in a way. Like sort of what Michael was saying is it's like I really feel like the truth is that if you are forced to really consider how can we make remote or some of our people to be able to work remotely work, how what kind of mechanisms, what kind of workflows do you need to set up in order to do that? What you're going to find is you're going to have probably less meetings, I hope. And you're probably going to at least make sure that the meetings themselves are more meaningful, because you're going to feel like there's a scarcity. And when a scarcity happens, when it comes to like having people collected in a room, so like when you have people that work remote, maybe they come in like once a week or something like that, you make that one day a week, you make that one count. Suddenly you're going to be scoping the kind of garbage meetings out of the mix. The kind of meetings that we all go to that should have been booked for 15 minutes, but you're there for an hour talking about whatever at the end, and no one bothered to go, okay, are we done? Can we go? Like, these are the things that I feel like are benefits that people just aren't really. It's like it's an illusion that it was working before, like the wallpaper analogy that Mike used. I think that it could shine a bright light on some of those problems, and maybe people could structure a better workflow around the absolute need, because you no longer can just coast by because you have no choice. You need to make the most out of those meetings.
Yeah, I think that's also, though, going with the assumption that people are going to be able to, after 2 years of talking to each other through a screen, get back into a situation where there's multiple people around and understand how to people again.
People.
Like,
That's a
there's
verb. I didn't know that. That's good. I like it.
I for the first time went and got dinner with a few friends in like 2 years, and it felt mostly natural, but also I realized, was I always this awkward? It's like the moment you become conscious of what do I do with my hands.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
what do I do with other people? Am I too close? Like, there's stuff that
and then you look down and you realize you're not wearing any pants.
Like, there's so many things that, just assuming that we'll also go back to a spot and people are going to be comfortable being around other people again.
That's so funny. So true.
Something that would have been 15 minutes, you won't have some people that are like, this needs to be 5 and I'm getting anxiety because there's too many people around. And then some people are going to be like, I needed people in my life and I've been at home alone with my cat for 2 years. I'm going to make every 15-minute meeting be an hour because I crave human interaction.
It's so true. It's so funny.
The other side of that, though, is like one of the pros of work from home is I've heard so many people who are deeply have always been deeply uncomfortable with the social environment of a meeting, and their ability to just type in the chat their opinions and not have to speak was like a huge boon to their existence as a developer. They felt like they were able to get their opinions out in a timely way and not have to wait to loop around till after a meeting because they can't handle the social pressure of speaking in front of a group of people. Yeah, I don't know. I feel that social part, though. I went to the office once to do like a check-in, and people, they never met me in person before. And I was conscious of myself and being like, oh, all of you can control my volume online. But when I'm in person, I have like a laugh that if I'm surprised by something is like a one loud shriek, and I swear I heard it echo off the walls, and people were like, "What?"
I never thought before the benefit of Atlanta remote.
That's so good.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if that kind of moved a little bit the power that might have been coming from mainly extrovert that were very good in a social context with people around, and now everyone is home, so this has way less effect to everyone else around. I'm wondering if eventually we'll have those kind of studies of how it affected more than just productivity and data and all that, but more on a human level, how some started to thrive all of a sudden, although they were super shy and maybe less productive for 10 years, and all of a sudden it kind of opened on their side, and others that were super loud and got promoted basically because they seemed to be the fearless leader, just eventually lost that power and never had the influence that they had before that. So that'll be pretty interesting data to have eventually.
And it'll be interesting too to see what work from home looks like when there isn't all of the global pandemic stuff going on, because like even talking with a coworker today was saying, oh, his kids were home today, and after them being at school for a bit and now back, it was like, how did we do this for a year of like every 10-15 minutes having them say, I have a question, hey, I need this thing. Like, what does this look like when you have choice? People that don't have everything else going on around them and can focus on that? Is going to be a different metric as well.
Yeah, I had so many meetings or reviews or a call with poor new parents that were trying to work,
yeah.
but with I don't know what age, what the words, but I would say those that had a 3 or 4-year-old that was just craving for
In that Y
attention
phase.
and would do anything to get the attention in the middle of those meetings. Oh God. Yeah.
One thing is for sure though, like aside from all the sort of the personal social sort of implications, the toothpaste is definitely out of the bottle at this point. And I used to say my prediction was that there were going to be dinosaurs, and they're going to be the kind of the animals on the planet that are able to pivot and survive and adopt and evolve. And I'm kind of starting to think that what's going to end up happening is that's what it's going to look like at first. There's going to be a wave of that where it's going to be a large number of people are going to want the choice. And so you're going to find a lot of the companies are going to embrace that as a sort of an incentive. You're going to see a lot of people wanting to gravitate towards those particular studios. But I think what you're going to maybe see eventually is maybe a resurgence though, because then you might even start to see different types of it's going to be woven into the culture of the different studios. Just like right now, where you kind of everyone already has a kind of unwritten sort of understanding in their head of certain studios have a very workaholic kind of culture, and other ones are a little bit more like they're catering to sort of family values and balance. Like we know this by word of mouth, but I think what's going to maybe happen potentially is you're going to have some studios that are going to sort of almost just own it, and it's going to be some that are going to be like, no, like we're kind of we do things here, and other people are going to be like, well, and we like flexibility, we'd like to offer our employees flexibility, and you're going to have very different types of teams, which could work out really well for everybody theoretically, because then there'd be choice.
I mean, for those studio, it could work well with those that want to be on site. So I could very well see a mid-sized studio over time accumulate a lot of those people that just want to be outside, and it's going to work. Massive studio that have a rolling of a dozen people coming in and people coming out, going from one studio to the other, it will be much more difficult, I think, for them to be able to adapt. That's for sure.
I guess we just get our popcorn and watch.
Yeah.
Maybe. Just sit there and enjoy the show.
Well, Brent, that's actually a perfect segue for the second topics. Yeah, popcorn. Perfect segue for it, which is another thing that we talked a lot about, and we had a lot of question about this transition that we have is I don't know what can frame it properly, but I'm just going to call it the rise of freelancing and personal branding in general, because there's many things that they were already on a collision course, but the pandemic just accelerated everything. So remote work, so the fact that most professional artists can work for any studio, and any studio can hire any artist wherever they are. Social media or communication in general, you have the LinkedIn, the Facebook. Basically, everyone is connected to everyone. You're 1 or 2 degree of separation to pretty much anyone in the industry. Digital galleries like the Instagram and ArtStation, which means that everyone has a presence. I mean, we don't have to go that far back in time to remember a time that, let alone, you had to send a DVD of your showreel and say, okay, now I know that those people know that I exist. Hopefully, if the postman did his job, and now they have this CD that is physically somewhere. Now, again, everyone exposed their work to everyone. And we put on top of that the shortage of labor that we have right now, which means that every studio are looking to find good artists, and they're fighting hard because schools are not pumping out good students or junior fast enough for the rise of the demand, because video game is exploding, and digital entertainment is exploding with the Netflix and others, and the same thing for VFX. Basically, there's the more and more 3D in everything, so there's not enough. So you put all this together. I know many very good artists that they don't have to spend 40 hours on it. They just have a presence. They are proactive on LinkedIn. They have it, and basically they make sure that their presence is known, and they have dozens of calls from all studios on a weekly basis. And this is kind of new, this way that you can almost become a mini, professional artist celebrity, meaning that you just have to stay there and the demand is going to come your way. And that's a pretty big shift of how it used to be. So maybe let's start with that question. Is that something that's been on your radar? Is that something that you have observed? And how do you think it will evolve over time, and it might affect the relationship between professional artists and studios?
Oh boy.
I'm going to let's go, Brent. You start with this one.
Okay, well, I mean, it's so much to unpack there. I think well, I mean, it's interesting because I've lived this a little bit, right? Like starting Agora.Community with you, and I found myself suddenly putting myself out a lot more out there, and so there is a bit of I don't really feel like it was ever selfish, like trying to brand myself. I think it was just because it was something that I just felt like, well, I mean, you and I talked about it for years, right? But the part of the result of that is that I am, whether I was trying to or not, building a little bit of a brand. And I think that I've seen a lot of other people, because they spent more time at home for the first time ever, start YouTube channels. I've seen some people that started like just, decided that, there wasn't enough of this kind of information out there. So damn well do it. Like Pascal's a good example. He was doing these motion builder tutorials, these little pieces, and putting them out there. And he was just doing it just to do it. And it was because he was at home a lot more. He had a little bit more time because he was home. And I think that changes the dynamic a little bit, because I think it's sort of, some people shifted with that, and so suddenly the sort of the rules of the game has sort of, the bar moved a little bit, and I think it's going to surprise some people, because some people that are not necessarily thinking about the next things that they can do and spending a little bit more time working on their LinkedIn profile, they're going to maybe feel like they're at a disadvantage, where some of the other people who picked up on that trend are going to be maybe at a big advantage, because they're going to be able to market themselves, be the first ones at the top of that pile, and so they might be getting the better jobs. But it's an interesting time to be around in this industry, because like, as you said, it's never been busier. So maybe even if you're not putting yourself out there, you're going to get a job anyways, because people are literally looking for you rather than you needing to look for a job, which is unprecedented. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see, because it's the game is shifting. That's for sure. I think it'll be interesting to see how it play out in the next couple of years.
I definitely feel like there will be like a big turning point. I feel like as many people as I've seen start up these side projects, monetize your hobbies, whatever, your Etsy store, your YouTube channel, whatever it is you've done. I've also seen what I consider to be an like almost absurd number of game company startups.
Oh,
like, I feel like there's a new one every week that is claiming, top talent from AAA games that have previous massive success and these long resumes, like studio after studio after studio. So right now there is this massive surplus of jobs, but I also don't know. I feel like all of those studios, as they were starting up, probably were like, this is a great time for us to start. And then 10 of them came out at once. And it's like, which one's going to survive? How many of those people who were starting their YouTube channel during the pandemic are now going to get bored at the same time that 50% of these studios make it, and suddenly you have this tidal wave of animators looking for work again. So even if there are some people who have sort of stacked their resume over time by doing these extracurriculars, as it were, if they're next to like a couple dozens, hundreds more people who have tried and tried something new and are now looking to move back into more traditional structures. I mean, I don't know how the ecosystem of games changed, but I see a lot of people doing a lot of new things. And I think statistically it's impossible that they all succeed. And so at some point...
Oh, sure. You got to bring math into it. You got to bring math into it.
Don't ask me anything else about math. I said the word statistics. I knew I said it correctly. Let's move on.
12 minus 8.
I'm breaking.
First 20 digits of pi. Go.
Nope.
Yeah.
3.1456. No.
Oh
Oh
my
man,
gosh.
I bet you those ones are right. I have a funny
Wow.
feeling.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, so me personally, freelance always sounded like a lot of work. Because it sounded like you sort of had to have two jobs when you did freelance. There was the
Mhm.
job of doing the work, and then the job of finding more work.
Mhm.
And I certainly think, branding yourself and getting yourself out there and making it easier for people to find you helps to make that second job a little easier. But it still sounds like there's a fair bit of work that goes into that. Um, one of the things that we were talking to somebody that we were this was a couple of years ago about um, external development support, and one of the things that they said that really kind of stuck with me was the idea that um, when you have roles and positions that can be outsourced, or you can partner with somebody externally for shorter extended amounts of time, whatever. Everyone internally sort of needs to move up on the value chain, right? And to me, that sort of becomes the point of, I think, for people who say, I like the craft of making a thing. I don't want to have to be part of conversations around what is the thing and how many iterations do we need to prototype to get the thing. They like the, here's a box, I need you to fill it with interesting stuff. And I think more and more that stuff is where people who are really into that will likely benefit from a freelance model, from creating a brand, from doing that stuff. Now, those people also usually tend to be like, I just want to do my thing, and they're introverted and they kind of probably aren't even online. So I don't know where that connection is, but I know internally there's still just a number of things that are around implementation and systems work and things like that um, you sort of need an expert, and you need somebody that you can grow over a long amount of time that I think freelance still doesn't get. And more and more, I mean, it varies depending on project and studio and technology and stuff.
Yeah.
But it seems like more and more those are the people that are in demand and needed at studios and teams. So I guess all that rambling about is to say I don't know how much it is. I also know, like, there's some people who were really online who over this amount of time said, like, I'm tired of being online, and they're disconnecting more and
Yeah.
more from it as well, right?
Yeah, I think one of the things that you mentioned, Brent, is that there's a lot of people that had a lot of time on their ends, so it might have fueled for sure this new reality. But I think that there was already two types of those that were working at the same. They got out of school, they got into a big studio, and they've been there for the last 12 years. And you have those that are going from one project to the other, and those are often the one that went to work abroad, and they come back and they tried game and they came back in anime, and it just moved around. I think that for those, it used to be okay. You maybe send your demo, you go for an interview, maybe you fly there, you come back. And now, if you have all those demands that are coming in, you can filter through those. You don't have to move anywhere. Everything still happens here. You have your own setup with your tools that you're used to. And basically, all the friction of finding work at different studio has been drastically reduced. So I kind of agree with that. First, there's some, individual or expertise. You need a core, and you need a strong group of people, developers, and all that. That's going to stay on the long run to be efficient. And then you have a lot of artists, and I would count, maybe character artists and some riggers and animators and all that. That for them to come in and out of different production can still be very efficient. And for them now, what they were already doing, but there was a little bit of friction, is now effortless for them compared to how it was. So if on top of that they have a little online presence and they're just sharing their work and all that, I think that's going to. I think that both sides are going to adapt, and studio will recognize that, okay, those are the type of role and position that we need to keep for the long term.
Yep.
And those are all those other positions that we can afford to have in and out. And you know what? Yeah, exactly. It will reduce our head count in between production. It will allow us to better balance the budget and all that. So I think if done properly, it can have a positive impact on both sides.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're already starting to see that divide. At least I am, where it's very clear that certain roles are sort of indispensable, and you need them to be kind of. There's a long onboarding process, and there's a lot of trust that needs to get built. And those are usually the very technical roles. I think Mike sort of laid it out when he said, the implementers, the more the technical tech artists and the technical animators, the people that are building the systems. Essentially, they're building the whole framework that everyone's going to sort of hang their work on. But interestingly, those people are needed for pre-production because they're usually building the foundation at that point, and then they're obviously very important during production, and then when they're closing, because they're the ones that are going to get slammed by bugs. They need to be there the entire time. But take like an animator, like a gameplay animator. They are usually stir crazy and bored during pre-production because the director's usually all distracted and they're trying to figure out what game they're making, because they might have got brought onto the team a little early because they were available, or they were rolling off on other projects, so now they're there kind of twiddling their thumbs, and the producers start getting stressed out because they're not doing anything, and then now they start distracting the directors that are supposed to be figuring out what game you're supposed to be making, and then they get these guys doing stuff, and it's sort of a mess, and it's always been a mess. And so I'd like to think that maybe the silver lining is that this might lend itself better to this idea of letting some of those roles that are fluid, allow them to be fluid. It's going to maybe be bad news for people that are, they're like, his game industry has been protected from this for a long time. Like most game companies are still hiring people kind of permanent, where the VFX, a long time ago, that boat sailed. They were like, nope, it doesn't make any sense because there's no way we can weather those storms, trying to pay those people while we're in between projects. So I don't know, maybe we'll see what happens, but I do agree those certain roles are always going to be super critical. And if you're looking for stability, you would probably be really smart to start picking up some more technical skills. That's my prediction.
T-shaped. Get yourself T-shaped, as they say.
T-shaped.
And like you have like your one main skill, and then you have skills that you are, that's not your main job, but you can do, and the other cross of the T.
It's the first time I ever heard that. I thought you were talking about mocap shoots.
My main skill is opinions, and then the rest of it is just buzzwords to cover my opinions. Yeah.
My main skill is idea creation, and my T-shaped skill is delegation.
Oh,
nice.
Well played.
Beautiful.
Well played.
Awesome. All right, let's move on. We have another 15 minutes max to the last one.
Oh boy.
This one is actually following a conversation. I think it's last week that I had with Samantha Youssef, and it's something that again we've discussed a lot this year on the stream, and it seemed that it's something that didn't had a lot of airways before, but people are slowly opening up, which is to paint a broad frame of just mental health in general in our industry. The conversation that I had with Samantha, because she was coming out of a project that was very demanding, and there was some people that were on the verge of burning out and all that, and my kind of sympathetic view is that why is this something in our industry? First of all, most of us are artists in a sense. We're creative people. We're very demanding with ourselves. We have the imposter syndrome, which we're very demanding in general with what we want to provide. It's a creative environment, so it means that it's subjective. It's not just 1 + 1 = 2, and then you have an easy judge. No, everything can be judged and seen by any angle. It's very technical. I mean, you learn something. The tools are always evolving. There's a lot of tech evolve, so you always have to adapt. High pressure by the deadlines and all that. And obviously, there's also often a lot of money, which means that there's a lot of pressure too. So you put all of this together, and it's almost like a pressure cooker. And after many years, 10, 20 years, it starts to take a hold. Stress once in a time, upon a time, it's fine. We can deal with it. But when you have sustained stress for a long period of time, the mind is not made for it. And this is usually when you get exhaustion, you get burnout, depression, and all that. And it seemed that, again, for a couple of years now, it seems that the awareness of it is more and more exposed. And it seems that during the pandemic, and maybe for both sides, some people were home and they were freaking out because of the social isolation, or because they had to work with the kids and they got it very difficult. On the other side of the spectrum, there's some people that just took it easy, and they're like, wow, I can actually have a work-life balance. I'm never going to go back to work 60, 70 hours. That doesn't make sense anymore. I do not go back to this life that I had. So is that something that you also recognize, that there's a growing awareness that we can talk about it and openly? And what do you think will change, assuming that we want to create a better place in the work environment? What do you feel will have to change in the years to come, maybe compared to how we did things in the last 15, 20, 25 years? Maybe Mike, starting with you this time.
Yeah. So, what needs to change? Probably, I think most things, right? Need to change. I think at the core, what we're seeing is most games are AAA games are traditionally reliant on power fantasies, and they are then created in studios of people that replicate those power fantasies in their life and in the way of their organization. And I think what we start to do is, with work from home and with the ability for remote, and with tools becoming more accessible, so that you can have people making games that don't fall within the traditional structures of privilege and such, that you're getting all of these things sort of starting to come together and butt up against one another. And I think you're starting to get people that are moving into positions of leadership at these studios and hopefully subverting some of those power structures, because if they're women or POC, and they're very used to the fact of how power structures of the world have been used against them, you hope as they move into these things that they're subverting and dismantling as much as they are as anything else. So things that need to change for me is, like, how do we make games that aren't reliant on death, on combat, on inflicting pain? How do we make games that aren't focused on colonialism and I am overtaking this planet, I'm overtaking this group, I am consuming? To me, at the core, like, that's, as artists, as creatives, we have this platform, we have ability to create experiences and characters and systems that can do other things. And at the same time, we're part of organization. Like, designing a game and systems of a game is very similar to designing your studio organization and your culture and your values. And those two things are not different. So as much as you want to say, look, we have an inclusive culture, all of our games are about war and death, like, that's not true. And so I guess a lot needs to change, but at least, like, these are conversations that are being had more in the open, as opposed to
Not had at all.
not had at all, right? And so, like, yeah, like so everything needs to change. I think
Tear it all down.
That's society as a whole. But anyway,
Capitalism.
yeah.
Yeah, that's super interesting to see the parallel that you meet between the type of production that we're creating, the type of art, the type of universe, and all that, and how it can directly affect the workplace itself. That's a parallel that I never thought of before, but that's super interesting.
Well, it definitely. I've always said that making a game feels like a lot like a game, and I think that it's because of it's quite a salient point what you made there, Mike, because I never made that connection either. Like the actual like what we're expecting the player character to do in that game are these ridiculous feats of heroism, and normally it's really in today's standard of what heroism really should be. They don't line up really. They line up in some people's minds, I would say, but I think that those are the minds we would probably want to, actively pursue, try to change. I've always said that, we are. It's like I feel like the game industry is every single year that ticks by, we're squandering this gift because there is so much. It is so ripe with potential. I mean, anybody who's really felt that way before, anyone who's ever there are. Thank friggin' heavens, there are some games out there that touch on this, but there are so many, there's so many things you could tell, so many stories you can tell in such an interesting, unique way that film cannot even come close to. Just they can't even touch, because we're watching a film as a passive audience. You're living kind of vicariously through these people, but when you're playing a game, you are experiencing it. Like you are or at least as close as you possibly can to experiencing it. And I think that there's something very profound about that. And I think there are games that are very, that have the potential to really provoke you emotionally in good ways and challenge you in really smart ways, but they're so rare. They're so rare, and I'm just like, when are we going to start using this medium for for more than what it's possible for? For more than what we're currently using it for. It's just, there's so much. We're leaving so much on the table right now.
Yeah. I do think, I said capitalism as though we were in jest, but truly, that's the root of it. It's like, why don't we have more of these experiences? Or why are people getting burned out? Well, because they need to get the game done at a certain time. Well, why is it so urgent that they get that game done at a certain time? Well, to make investors happy.
Yeah.
Well, why do the investors care? Well, they don't have any money. It's like, well, what if we just took longer? It's like, well, then they wouldn't get paid fast enough. It's like, okay, what if I just didn't do that anymore? It's like, well, you need money. It's like, I'd like to make this project that is softer and sweeter and about something that is a quieter moment of life, and it's a shorter experience. Is that okay? Well, no, only this many people want to play that. And so you can't charge them $500 to buy your, a piece of your game. And you can't. And the reason that matters is because you need to live. And so it all comes back to how difficult it is just to kind of exist as a society without having a whole bunch of money.
But here's the thing, games do have a whole bunch of money.
Well, I know they do.
Everyone's making $1 billion a year as a publisher. But the problem is next year they need to make $1.1 billion.
They have to make more,
and then $1.2 billion, right?
Yeah.
And it really comes down to the fact that it's the way it changes is it needs to, the people who were in charge of these projects need to not be the same people who grew up on games and then base all of their references on movies that they've just watched recently, and need to not be a bunch of men, really, right? So that it's not just
it would help.
let's default, because it's we just keep using the same tired references over and over and over, and it's because our life experiences are all too similar. And so,
but the reason why that we don't get those new life experiences, when I say it's hard to exist with a whole bunch of money, I'm not saying there isn't a bunch of money in games. I'm saying that bunch of money, people are like, well, I'd love to start my own studio, but I can't because I don't have the money and I can't get the money. So I got to work for this other company that's going to give me the money. And eventually, even when I try, I'll still have to get funding from somebody else who's still just actually running that other studio I was just at. So it's like this vicious little cycle of who's got the money? None of us, baby.
But it's out there. And that's what's so
It's
wild.
out there.
You'll talk to some people that are like, there's so much money wanting to be invested in games
Yeah.
right now that if you're somebody whose job is already around money, then you can find money easily right now. But then again, it's the same thing. Like, so what you're hoping then is somebody starts a new thing, like you were saying earlier, Lana. Like, all these people are starting up new things, and it's like, okay, yeah, maybe some of them succeed, some of them won't. Some of them, I think, are filling the AA void that sort of went away for a while, that is now sort of coming back up, and you hope then that let's move people that are into these leadership roles at existing companies. Like, let's get some diverse candidates. Let's get some diverse leadership in there to help take the resources of this established thing and direct it towards something new and engaging. Because ultimately, the thing that AAA has is, here's resources to make a more polished experience. And there's a lot of, like, you're going to need to probably start with some pretty established tropes and systems and things like that. But how could we at the very least put a wrapper around it that it could be fresh, right? At the same time, how do we get more people starting things up and creating things so that it's not just, here's indies doing things that are narratively or tonally or systemically interesting, but across the board.
I think it will also come from the ground up. I mean, this idea of, how money is influencing all this is very true, because at the end of the day, the investors, they want to have their but there's also a part of self-inflicting pain of just being at work, and that's a conversation we had with George Vigara, and that he struggled a lot until that he said, you know what, screw other people's expectation. I'm going to do what I think is right. I'm going to leave at the time that I feel is appropriate to leave. And if someone is shaming me because I'm only leaving at 5:30 and I don't stay until midnight for the third day in a row, screw them. And if this is a place that doesn't respect this, I'm going to move elsewhere. So I think it's also going to come from, self-respect, a better life work balance, and say, you know what, you can have 100% of my creativity and whatever it is from this time and this time, but the rest, I have a lot of other shit that I want to do it with my life. So it's I think at some point it's the industry is going to mature to a point that people will recognize very rapidly, oh, this is not an environment where I'll feel comfortable to be myself, and they're just going to move in other studios that allow that culture to thrive.
We need to get there, so that we have to get to the point though where this is happening well before people are like at the brink, right? Because that's his story is essentially getting to that brink and realizing nope, and he had the wherewithal and the self-respect to be like nope, and he took a step to the side and then he figured it out. But I see too many people not able to do that. They get lost in it, and then we lose them. The industry loses the people because they're just like, they get soured by it, or worse. I think we all know somebody who knows somebody who's unfortunately just not made it out of that trap. And I think that, like, I agree with you. I am hopeful and optimistic that we can get there, but like, I don't know. It's like, how do we, it's like the diversity thing, right? It's like, how do you, these things are like, everyone wants it. Apparently everybody wants it. Everyone can talk a good talk about wanting it. It's a good thing, but like, but like, what do we, like, it's a complicated thing to solve, and we have to get ahead of it somehow. Like, and I mean, like I've always said that the way to fix some of those problems is to make sure that you try to get to the very, very source, and like find a way of, like, if companies are serious about that, don't just start making sure you actively do a better job recruiting. I for sure do that. I mean, that's the least you can do. But I think that the other things you can do is start looking at being part of the solution to the problems that actually got us there in the first place. Like, for instance, like go to communities that don't even have access to learning this kind of stuff and bring that to them. Get it in their hands, because it's not going to happen by itself. It's not going to just fix itself. And then suddenly we have this wave of new recruits because we've been waving the flag going, we're looking for diversity over here. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. We got to be more active with the solutions,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
And being more open as an industry, I think a lot of people fall into that trap of feeling like they have to grind themselves down till they're like bleeding their very soul into their job at 1 a.m. after working 15 days in a row or whatever. I think that happens so much because people feel like there's not another option for them.
Yeah.
This is the job I have. I this is the experience I need. And having entry level positions open, being willing to train people, being open as an industry of safe spaces, not safe spaces, having open discussions, people who are brave enough to come forward with the experiences they've had,
Yep.
making sure that people who are in a rough spot know that there is always a choice.
Yeah.
There's always a choice. And even if that choice is just leave for a bit.
Yeah.
And that won't be like, oh, now you face the repercussions of the rest of the industry saying no.
The
you never
choice
get
and
to
a
come back.
sympathetic ear, right? Like there are like the people who feel this way need to start talking out, like need to be speaking up so that they're beacons to people in those storms, right? Like, because otherwise it can very quickly feel like you are outnumbered, and there is literally, like you said, you're trapped. There's no choice. So I guess I'll just have to hunker down and try to survive it.
Yeah. But and that's not to like put the responsibility on people who have been victims of difficult situations. I know what you're saying. And I hope that's clear that that's what I'm saying. I'm saying there's so many knobs to turn to get change, and it's not easy. It's not going to come from one spot. There's no quick solution, but there are a lot of small things that I think everybody who's a part of this industry are capable of doing in their everyday life to make this better. And if everybody starts making even one small change, the whole thing can get better as a whole.
So for clarity, what I was trying to say, although maybe clumsily, is I think for sure the burden should not rest at the feet of the people who have been completely stampeded on in some of these places and some of these toxic environments. I'm saying it's those of us who are lucky enough to have the privilege and the position to be able to like try to make sure that people know that there is safety in places, and that there is some you can, like, you're there to listen and to try to help and to try to find solutions, because these things don't fix themselves unless everybody is part of the solution. They can't be just on the singularities. It's got to be everybody.
Yeah, and just having those discussion is the start of it also. Even if it's a very small contribution, just this conversation and the others that we had this year, hopefully is going to, one by one open the mind of those that might be struggling, that you're not alone. There's a lot of people that are struggling. It's just that collectively, usually we keep it for ourselves and we think that we're strong enough, and eventually we just, until our body tells us that, okay, now you're going to take a break and you have no choice. Just don't get there, because it can definitely happen.
It's not worth it, that's for sure.
Yep.
But see, I really like pizza. And I hear if I stay late, I get pizza.
Yes, there is that. There's the lure of pizza, the ultimate.
Oh,
you know what? I take back everything I said, actually. That's a great point.
Free bagels.
Free overtime is good because pizza. Yeah, that's true.
You're right. Forget about it.
What a waste of time this hour was.
Dismantling problematic power structures? Pizza.
That's right. Pizza's good. Well, wait a minute.
Well, what's on the pizza?
Yeah, I was going to say, are we talking about like vegetarian pizza, or are we talking like the works? I don't know. It really depends. Yeah. I agree.
That was great.
Well, we're at time.
I
don't know how we managed to survive the hour without exploding. It was pretty good.
We did it.
Mm-hmm.
There were much more serious topics than I was expecting. You led me to believe that this was going to be like a Tiger King 2 podcast or something. And instead you're like, what about work from home and mental health? And I'm like,
wait a minute. Bait and switch.
This is going to be a really wild show, everyone. Buckle up. How are you dealing with your emotions during a pandemic? David.
Well, you never know with David. He could have surprised us. You could have went like he's done this to me before. The classic one is the first time we did something like this. It was two of us. We were doing like this speed debate thing, and we were just trying to. There was just two of us. And we had to go off to the side and choose a bunch of topics. And so I was the one with like the serious questions. He came up with like these ridiculous, silly questions, and I'm like, well, we're playing a completely different game. But I don't know. It was fun. So now you never know. David's just gonna roll the dice.
Yeah.
He's gonna just.
I'll say, you know what, Mike, next time you bring the topic and we'll go with the crazy round
Mike
table.
would be
with
like,
the chat.
okay, Neuralink, the animation of the future is just done with your mind. How do you feel about it?
Yeah.
And go.
I mean, it's I don't know if you're totally prepared for your signing yourself up there for it. I'm a fickle
Probably not.
beast, and as anyone on the team will tell you, I'm pretty sure. I think they at this point assume I'm getting paid per bad idea. So just
Wow. That's a good. You've managed to set the bar in a very nice, convenient location for yourself, though. That's good.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's like, oh, I've got tons of bad ideas.
That's right. Do your worst. Okay, well, thanks
awesome.
everybody. It was fun. We'll have to have a sequel, and maybe we will change the theme and sort of mix it up and do something a little bit goofy next time, and then totally switch it to the last second again, and then have some serious questions because that's always fun.
Yeah, thanks for accepting our invitation. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, thanks for
Good
the
seeing
invite.
everyone.
Enjoy the rest of your weeks. Thank you, chat, for being here, hanging out with us, and just letting us talk at you for a while. And we'll see you on the next one. Cheers, everybody. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
I'm still here. I kind of forgot that I was. That's funny. So thanks again. I don't know, like David said, these are sort of social experiments that we do with these sort of ideas. We're just trying things on for size. And by the way, Lana, I know you're still in the background. You can hear me. Sorry, I cut you off in mid-bye. I have a habit of doing that. So I'm going to finish her bye. Bye, everybody. It's because it's awkward. I can't just turn everybody off. I have to go one by one all the way down. And then anyways, sorry. So yeah, we have more craziness in store up all the way up until I guess right before Christmas. We have a bunch more streams, and then eventually it'll be January, just like that. I feel like I blinked the other day, and then I went from October all the way to December. I think I missed November completely. I don't know if did it happen? I don't know. Did it? Can someone vouch for that? I don't know if November was even here because it doesn't feel like it was. But I think a lot of it is due to having just so many of these fun conversations in the middle of the week that kind of make the weeks go faster than they used to. But yeah, stay safe out there. I hope to see you on the next stream. And until then, stay animated. Bye, everybody.